Most of you all know me, but for those who do not, my name is Michael Goldberg, and I am uh, sitting here in Cleveland. Larry, you'll probably appreciate. I'll make Connor's dad guess where. Do you like my background? Do you know what that is, Larry? Hold on, you got to unmute.
Yes, Cleveland. Is that the old Cleveland Stadium?
The old stadium. I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. Thank you. My old
very
stadium
good
background.
Yeah.
For I knew when we get former Clevelanders like Connor, I like the little Cleveland memorabilia. So yes, that's my municipal stadium. So I'm the executive director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship, and I'm also a professor at Weatherhead. And it's great to have Connor Diemand-Yauman and family joining us today. Connor and I met a few years ago when he was back in his hometown of Cleveland, decamped from San Francisco, and we got to have coffee. And I've kept in touch with Connor over the years and watched his career from Coursera to Philanthropy and what's happening at Merit America now, where he's the co-CEO, and it's really exciting and well-timed New York Times piece for, I guess, is in today's physical paper we've sent it around. So Connor, it's great to have you. Today's session, all of our sessions are moderated by students. So we're lucky to have Yvonne Pan, who's a rising senior from Brooklyn, New York, who's also an intern this summer with our Veale Institute. So Yvonne will be the moderator. For those who are either watching on Facebook or obviously part of our chat here on Zoom, we love making these really interactive. So just let Yvonne know in the chat if you have a question to ask Connor, but she will be the moderator. And with that, I will turn it over to Yvonne.
Yeah, like Michael said, I will be moderating the discussion. So a little bit about myself. I'm a rising senior from Brooklyn studying civil engineering and environmental studies. And I want to turn it over to Connor to talk a little bit about his career journey and how he got to where he is today and how he's currently the co-CEO of Merit America.
Great, thank you. It's so nice to be here, Michael. I've been looking forward to this, and Yvonne and the whole Case Western team. Thanks for pulling this together. So Yvonne, was the question how did I get here?
So just a little bit about your background and your career journey. That would be great.
Okay, so first my background, as Michael asked, my background is actually an infrared sauna. So everyone's wondering what this is. So I have this massive closet in my apartment that I converted into an infrared sauna. And then when COVID hit, I turned my sauna into a closet. The good news is that I have an office now. The bad news is that after about 15 years, I'm back in the closet. So that's been, that's a downside, but we're all making sacrifices in this time. So as Yvonne and Michael said, I'm currently co-CEO at an organization called Merit America. And Merit America is focused on serving underemployed and unemployed Americans and placing them into high growth careers in advanced manufacturing, IT, and healthcare. So there's over 100 million workers in the United States that are either unemployed or underemployed who don't have a bachelor's degree. And this is, I believe, the highest potential segment of our labor market. In many ways, they are the most ignored for their potential. And there is just incredible opportunity with these individuals. And so Merit America is about serving our learners who do not have bachelor's degree and placing them into family sustaining careers. Just to give you an idea of the types of individuals we serve, on average, our learners come in making about $25,000 a year. And after a program that is free, that they pay nothing for up front, unless they land a job, they leave with a salary of about $45,000 a year. So $25,000 to $45,000 a year. And this is a career with benefits, something that they can build upon, over a long period of time and sustain their families. Before this, I was I co-founded an organization called Philanthropy University. And Philanthropy University is a training platform that trains nonprofits and social enterprises at scale. So one of the largest trainers of the social sector, training tens of thousands of organizations so that the philanthropic sector, the nonprofit sector, can be more impactful. We can get a better ROI on the investment in that sector. Before that, I was one of the early employees at Coursera. And I think that's where I first met Michael with his amazing MOOC that I loved. And we found out that we were basically twins. We had all these strange overlaps. Being from Cleveland and going to Princeton, and just very similar, I think, interests and orientations. And then prior to that, I spent some time in South Korea, starting a children's educational show. And before that, I was hopping around teaching abroad. So there's a common denominator of education, but I was all over the place. Still am, probably.
Yeah, well, thank you for clarifying the sauna background as well as your personal career background.
Sure.
So I know you majored in educational psychology at Princeton. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that impacted you, and I guess how concrete your career journey was. Did you know what you wanted to do when you first graduated?
Yeah, great question. So I was a cognitive psychology major, and I majored in psychology mainly because of my mom, who was a brilliant psychologist. And given that I had a mom who was a psychologist, I spent the first 18 years of my life in therapy. And I think that revealed to me that, the power of this craft. And I was just fascinated with how the brain works and how people learn, what are they motivated by, and how do you make decisions? So I was really drawn to the discipline. And then I've always been interested in education, and my family we come from a long line of educators. My mom was a school psychologist. My dad taught for a bit. My sister's a teacher. My aunt and her aunt, and I mean, they're just teachers abound. And so it's kind of in my blood, and I really enjoyed applying the the principles of psychology to learning and cognition. That led to me publishing some research about how to improve learning outcomes. And, after that, I would say that in terms of how I decided what came next, I think that I had a broad thesis, or I had a broad hypothesis that I was interested in driving equity through education. I felt extremely privileged. I got to go to this great school. I had great parents. And I felt like quality education could be a real force for good, an opportunity to drive equity into very inequitable systems. And so that kind of led to these different steps and different manifestations of that hypothesis, right? I think when I remember so vividly when I was a senior and I was thinking about what I wanted to do, what I'd encourage you is to not hold anything too tightly, to come up with some broad, again, hypotheses around how you want to show up in the world, what you want to do, but test those with real openness and humility. Don't hold any particular path too tightly, because if you do, you can cut yourself off from a lot of the fun of figuring it out.
Yeah, that's definitely really good advice, especially because you recently transitioned to your role in Merit America after spending 4 years at Philanthropy University. I think you said you started in January. Could you kind of talk about the differences between the two organizations, and how, especially because at Philanthropy University, you're working with organizations, whereas Merit America works with individuals. So how does that shift change how you approach teaching and education?
Yeah. So at Philanthropy University, we were training social enterprise organizations and nonprofits at scale. And our goal was, how do we make these organizations more efficient, more effective, so that the impact that they're having is multiplied? So you can think of it, a lot of philanthropy, a lot of nonprofit development, it's focused on, giving more money so that they can do more with programs. So, can we build more wells for these impoverished communities, for example? Our work was one step back. It was, can we improve the skills, the strategies, the dynamism of the people building the wells and setting this and setting the plan for the organization. So it's about capacity building. And yeah, so that was focused on that segment. This is focused on underemployed and unemployed inspiring Americans who need support getting that next career. So it's very different. As you said, we're training individuals, not organizations, and also the impact we're striving for is very different. So at Merit America, our North Star, the thing we care more about than anything, is long-term wage gains in recession-resilient careers, which has never been more important given everything that's going on. And our goal is, over 5 years, we want to drive $1 billion of wage gains. So remember that I said our learners come in making around $25,000 a year, and they leave on average making $45,000 a year. That $20,000 wage gain, we look at that as kind of our social ROI for the money that we're putting in to train these learners. So it's very different, both in terms of how we're training them, how we're measuring it, and then the outcomes that we're seeking. And I see there's a question. Yvonne, should I answer this or?
Yeah. Donna Luisa, would you mind just telling us what your question is? Just reading it out loud for us.
Yeah, and maybe also introduce yourself if you're gonna. And it's great. Thanks, Connor, for noticing. But maybe we'll have Donna Luisa introduce. Anybody who wants to ask a question can do it live, and introduce yourself when you ask it, please. Go ahead, Donna Luisa.
Okay, hi, I'm Donna Luisa Eversley, and I'm from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And I am also a student, online student with University of Liverpool, doing a master's with a specialization in entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur and a business development coach, that sort of thing, because it's a big thing. What I would like to find out, Coursera and the MOOC style platforms, can you tell me if there is anything that you would like to see expanded on that platform, that forum? And do you think it should be opened to a younger group of students? I'm talking about maybe pre-university, especially as it relates to third world countries having access to learning, where learning is difficult, to going to school is a challenge. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh my gosh. So first, what an impressive background. You should be doing this, panelist. What am I doing here? Holy cow. That's amazing. Such a good question. Okay, so I'm hearing two questions. One is, how should we think about maybe expanding or enhancing the types of learning on MOOCs? And related to that, should we be orienting more towards younger students? COVID has been this powerful force in online learning, where we are all, I think that this space has accelerated literally 5 years. In that this feels like the new normal. This is the water that we're swimming in, which I think is exciting. And I think it poses some complexities and opportunities, especially for younger learners. So if we're going to really early childhood development, let's talk about, elementary school or kindergarten, I think there are real risks for skewing too far into online learning, at least in the way that it's currently packaged. And the risks there is that I think that there are many social components to education that are kind of we just take for granted, and showing up at a place and interacting with people and having the patience to deal with like really dynamic live environments that you lose in more structured settings. I think that there's an opportunity in MOOCs to focus on more metacognitive skills as well. So helping people not just learn content, but learn how to learn content. In addition to some of those, can we think about innovations 5 or 10 years from now that help people enhance and hone, social interactions that will allow us to present this to younger segments. I think that the MOOC modality needs more kind of customization or segmentation for different types of learners. This is something that we do at Merit America, where we use a lot of MOOCs, but we dynamically pair coaching with that MOOC, with those MOOCs that allow for better outcomes. So that's just a few things that I think that MOOCs could look into that we could do better on. Can we have more metacognitive learning about learning instruction? Can we focus for really younger learners? Can we somehow help with replicate some of the social interactions that are needed and that are learned in person? And can we also provide more dynamic instruction through coaching and meeting learners where they're at? I do think that there's an opportunity for more online learning for younger populations. I think that, especially in areas where there's limited education available. I'm actually less worried about younger populations though, and I'm more worried about older populations, and how do we use MOOCs for segments that are less, that are not technology natives, but really need to learn this content, especially in the world of COVID. So yeah, some ramblings there.
Thank you, Donna Lisa, for such a great question, and for Connor for answering that. Eddie has another question. Eddie, do you mind reading it out loud for us?
Yeah. Thanks, Connor, for joining us. This is kind of a follow-up to that, sort of. How has COVID-19 impacted what you guys have been doing at Merit America over these past few months?
Yeah, COVID has been pretty catastrophic on the nonprofit sector in general, but in particular, our segment, which is focused on upskilling disadvantaged groups. So there's a consortium of providers that are focused on training this segment, this segment of folks that have a bachelor's degree, folks from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and it's been really bad. I mean, you're seeing philanthropic funding dry up, you're seeing hiring freeze at these firms, and you're also seeing a lot of these models break down. So a number of providers in this space offered programming for these, or offered programming for their learners, for their users in entirely in-person settings. And this has been just awful for a number of organizations. Luckily at Merit America, our model from the beginning was about 80% online and 20% in person. And so when COVID hit and we had to go into shelter in place, we were able pretty much overnight to switch from in-person to fully virtual, and we were able to maintain outcomes. So we've been keeping really close track of our learners in terms of their outcomes, their placement rates, their self-reported satisfaction, and we've been blown away by the results. So just some data: over 90% of our learners are either ambivalent or positive to the change of being fully online. And we have been placing learners in jobs at pretty much a consistent rate. I think across the employment sector at large, we're seeing, we're seeing a lot of, it's very much a wait and see response in some of the largest firms. And we're working with just incredible partners like Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, Infosys, and others. And everyone is still trying to see, what's coming around the bend. And while we're seeing a real drop in roles in hospitality or travel, and we're seeing a lot of people laid off and file from unemployment, we're also seeing an increase in other sectors, in IT, finance, business. So yeah, it's affected our space in Merit America in a number of ways, but thankfully, because of our model, we've been able to really step up and expand while others are having to contract.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Eddie and Connor, for answering that. A little bit, so branching away from your role in Merit America, you teach a course about humor in business at Stanford. What impact does humor have on entrepreneurship? And can you think of a moment where it has helped you in a transaction?
Yes, sure. I think that humor is just a superpower in business and entrepreneurship that we don't use. I think there's an incredible amount of fear and trepidation about bringing our full, joyful, humorous selves to work. And I think that over many decades, we've developed this idea that you need to cultivate a work persona and a personal persona. And I think that leads a lot of us to feel closeted, right? And humor, I believe, is an incredibly positive force in that sense. And one of the things we talk about in the course is the number of ways that humor can improve the way you navigate your work and personal life. Humor, when you use it effectively, it increases power. It boosts perceptions of status. It makes you more persuasive. It allows you to stand out if you're making a pitch to a VC. It builds bonds. It makes people trust you more. It floods people's brains with serotonin and oxytocin, all of these really powerful cocktails of hormones that make people feel closer to you, that make people trust you. It's been shown to enhance creativity. It allows you to see solutions that others might miss and innovate. And finally, it allows you to be more resilient. There are proven health outcomes. It diffuses tension. It allows you to endure in light of the roller coaster ride that is starting something new. So I'm wild about the subject area. I so believe in it. And I think that we would be so much better off if we could bring more of ourselves to work. And a big part of that is bringing more humor, levity, joy to our interactions with one another. And really just being more human. I feel this so acutely when I read emails, business emails. Like we just write like we're robots. We write in a way that's so distant from the way that we actually show up in person. And I think it's a specific example of this very kind of these calcified, limiting business identities that I don't think are necessary. And so, it's like, can we start a movement where we actually allow those joyful sides of ourselves we allow our colleagues to partake in that in the same way that we would with our friends and family?
Yeah, absolutely. Really great point. I definitely didn't really see humor as being part of business, but reading about your course definitely encourages me to try to add that in. Could you talk a little bit about your course and how teaching is at Stanford? I know you just started last year.
I've been doing it for a couple of years. It's great. So the course is called Humor is Serious Business, and throughout the course we review why humor matters, what's going on in the brain, why does it help you increase power, build bonds, enhance creativity, be more resilient. We then talk about techniques from comedians, and we have comedians come in and share, like, what is a joke structure? What are different ways that you can mine your life for levity? What are delivery techniques? We talk about the application of humor in leadership, and how do you lead organizations? We talk about how to build cultures of levity and humor. We talk about the dark side and the gray area of humor, because humor can actually be used as a weapon, in addition to a tool. And so we talk about some of that gray area. And then finally, how can you use levity and humor to start new movements and elicit change in your work and in your community. So that's kind of a high level overview. But I find teaching so energizing and so rewarding on a very deeply human level. Like, just that opportunity to interact with someone and see that spark has just been phenomenal. And yeah, similar to some of the other teaching that I've done in the past. It's such a blast.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear you've had such a great experience. Michael has our next question.
I have so many questions, Connor. But hog this thing. It's great to have you. I mean, your work at Coursera was in the B2B space. And obviously we at Case partner with Coursera through the work they do with universities. The work you're now doing with Merit America and some of the partners that you mentioned today involves a lot of employers that would obviously be the folks that would hire. Scott Galloway, who's a professor at NYU, was recently on Kara Swisher's podcast talking about, coming out of COVID and, I'm sitting full-time on a university campus, and obviously you've got deep ties into Stanford and other places. I mean, there's all sorts of questions about higher ed and kind of what comes out of this. I mean, Scott Galloway on that podcast was talking about the moment that you see deeper partnerships between corporates and higher ed. Does Amazon or Google or others partner? And I think, there are some higher ed institutions like Arizona State that have really kind of led the way on some of their business partnerships. And I think other higher ed institutions have held back for a variety of reasons. So I'm sort of curious, given the work you're doing now, work you've done in the past, how might this all shake out, particularly on this sort of partnership side between the private sector and higher ed?
Yeah, there is an existential threat that is rippling through higher education right now. And I think that given what's going on with COVID, universities and colleges across the board are being asked and being forced to think about what is their actual value proposition. And I think that what we're going to see is likely, it's going to be rough. Some estimates, we're saying that, next semester, 25% or more of students are not planning to come back. And I think what that's going to prompt is these institutions to look at what is the value, what is the ROI of our education. And I think there's going to be real trouble for colleges and universities that are kind of in that middle tier. Not the Case Westerns, the Stanfords, the Princetons, and I think not so much the community colleges, which are very much on the ground, but that middle tier where the value of that bachelor's degree, the value of that degree is more opaque. To your question, I think that this is going to force these at-risk institutions to partner in really strategic ways with employers and try and bridge that education to employment gap. I hope that as a result of this, we will start to overcome bachelor's discrimination, which is so rife in this country. And what I mean by bachelor's discrimination is an employer saying, hey, we're only going to hire for folks that have a 4-year degree, when you don't actually need a 4-year degree, when there are incredibly talented and driven individuals who don't have that. And by the way, bachelor's degree is a direct corollary or bachelor's discrimination is a direct corollary for racial discrimination as well. And I think that hopefully what we will see is tighter partnerships with industry, a clearer theory of change between how the education you're learning leads to job outcomes that are the reason why most people go to school, and hopefully more of an emphasis on skills rather than the bachelor's degree. So I hope it'll be good in the end, but it's also really it's quite troublesome when you think what's going to happen to a lot of these schools. And I think it's necessary. I mean, you look at student debt in this country, it is unsustainable. And the people bearing the brunt of this are the people who are falling into this false narrative that everyone needs to go and get a 4-year degree. This is part of the American dream, right? This is like, if you're not doing this, you're not doing it right. It's bullshit. And these people are preyed upon, individuals who don't have the financing, who don't have the funds, who don't have the need to go to a 4-year degree. And they miss out on other opportunities that could be a much more efficient path to employment. So yeah, a lot to say there, but those are some thoughts. But I totally agree. There's going to have to be just a much tighter link between employment outcomes and what folks are learning. And it is so scary and surprising when you consider how divorced those two often are, with colleges and universities just teaching it's like we're just teaching our own thing. It's like we want people to thrive and be their best selves. And then it's like, but there's no conversations with industry, with companies and with jobs. And that's what most people want and need in this country.
Yeah, really great points. I'm sure most of us can relate to the student debt aspect of what you just said. I just wanted to check in with everyone to see if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a quick question.
I think we're going to let your dad ask a question, Connor. I was putting him on the spot.
Oh, God.
Oh, no, I thought you were going to ask a question, Michael.
Oh, I was going to put you on the spot. If you have, you can mull, and one of these great moments where you can ask your son a question.
Okay, well, I want you to know right now I've gotten thrown out of the old Cleveland Stadium many times, so I know that building well. Connor, very proud of you for what you've done. I think. Myself, I'm getting back into the trying to re-educate myself as far as many things, music, aviation, whatever. And I find that I truly enjoy getting back into the environment of learning. And that's why I feel that what's being done by your organization and the organizations that you've worked for in the past, it's extremely important, bringing education back into a meaningful relationship with real life and employment. And also along with employment, the ability for all of us to understand one another more and be kinder and more open to one another. And this is, I think, equally important during these times. But that was a comment, not a question.
Well, I agree with the comment, so that's good.
If you have anything, this whole thing was a real surprise for me, and I'm very pleased and proud that you're doing this. And thank you, Michael and Case Western, and for putting on this forum. It's very, very important, very timely during this time. The old way we talked about education and the way we were brought up doesn't work anymore. And this is innovative.
So I think that there, and I do agree that we are so focused on skills and learning and job readiness, and that's like, I drink that Kool-Aid. That's like, all I do. And at the same time, back to I think it was Donna Luisa's question, how can we think about equally important verticals of learning around, like, how do we treat one another? What is our responsibility to our communities, to our schools, to our families? How do we learn and give back? Like, I also don't want us to turn into automatons that are just like skill robots. Folk like we're all data scientists, because I don't know, you realize that in times like these, those other skills are equally just, if not more, important. And it's like, it feels like we don't learn them past second grade, anyway. Yvonne, what else you got, or Michael?
Yeah, really good points you just had there. I think Corey King has a question, if you want to ask it now.
Yeah, I think what you were doing is great, and like pairing people with different opportunities. But I was wondering more about the process behind that. I know that you mentioned that a lot of people there's university bias. Like, in order for a lot of people to get a good job, they have to go to a four-year university. That being said, even the people who go to a university end up doing things that don't necessarily correlate with their degree. So knowing this, how do you teach people skills that they are going to be using day in and day out? How do you pair those people to their but their potential career paths? How do you work on putting them down the right road?
Yeah, it's such a good point. On the one hand, we are blocking so many talented workers from getting jobs because they don't have a bachelor's. And on the other hand, there are a lot of people who have bachelor's and they're like, okay, I'm doing something. I studied like interpretive dance and now I'm coding. Like, it's not related. And so I think that it's a fantastic point. At the end of the day, I think that we just have to be more in tune with, more aligned with the needs and trends of employers. And I think we need to start reverse engineering from that space. So, at Merit America, everything that we do in terms of our programs, it is reverse engineered from a high demand job category. Again, currently in advanced manufacturing, IT, and healthcare. And then the program, the experience is built around that. The problem with higher education right now is that the academy often creates content and training based on what faculty wants to teach. And you know what? You will get some incredible gems like Michael, who are also aware of how that relates to, his course is directly related to getting a job and building a job. But then you have a lot of other courses that are it's just because that's what the faculty is interested in teaching. And that's when you get that whiplash, Corey, that you're talking about, where you take those classes and then you go out into the real world, you graduate the bachelor's, and it's like, there's no connection. Why did I learn that stuff? Now, I don't want to dock it, because those can actually be super transformative transformative learning experiences as well, but oftentimes don't relate to a job. So I would say, like, as a system, we need to work with employers. We need to be looking at Bureau of Labor Statistics data. We need to be looking at where the job trends are. And we also need to be looking at what are good jobs. The rate of disruption and the rate of innovation is just going through the roof right now. And so we want to put people in jobs that they can actually build into careers and not just hop around. And I think for graduates and folks in college, I think that as you gather more data about what moves you, what interests you, about the impact that you want to have on the world, I think as much as you can begin focusing on a particular track, a particular job category. I think that will add some clarity in terms of the skills that you can be gathering throughout that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Next, we have a question from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, could you ask your question?
Yeah, hi, I'm Elizabeth Chilrad. I'm a rising junior at CASE, and I'm actually an intern with Diemand at the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship. So my question was just that, obviously during the COVID-19 pandemic, kind of like the virtual space is how a lot of people are continuing on many aspects of their lives. I was able to continue my semester because I could continue my classes online. I have a job right now that I can do online. We're doing this right now online. But obviously, something that I've become more aware of as well is that, people without reliable internet access, are normally pretty disadvantaged because of that. And right now they're especially disadvantaged because of that. So as an online education nonprofit, I was just wondering if, you've done any efforts to try to bring kind of what you provide to communities who may face this disadvantage, or if that's something you're looking towards, and kind of what your thoughts are in general in this area.
Yeah, great question. And you raise a great point. People who don't have reliable internet access are disadvantaged in this new world. And not only that, people who don't have reliable internet access, that is a proxy for people who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who are disadvantaged. So there's just layers of disadvantage and barriers to access. So at Philanthropy University, this was a big part of our innovation and our work, because we were training nonprofits in the really remote areas. We were in 180 countries, and we were focused actually on local nonprofits, organizations that don't typically have the resources of larger international nonprofits that we might know of. We're talking about 10 to 20 person organizations, some of them off the grids, many of them, the only internet they have is from their phones. And so we poured a lot of investment there, and how do we build learning programs that can be downloaded onto a native device? How do we minimize the bit rate of our videos? How do we offer analog or not analog? How do we offer text only versions of our class? Fast forward to Merit America. Merit America is focused on Americans. So we are focused domestically. And we do require a baseline computer and device access, but we have experimented, and we will continue to, working with community partners to provide devices and access where we can to those individuals. With that said, the 80% of the programming, so for example, we offer a Google IT certificate, and we're doing that in partnership with Coursera. And so a lot of that technology is becoming better at being downloaded and used offline, better for individuals who don't have great internet. And so our programs kind of naturally progress with as the space progresses, but we do require at this stage that you have base internet access, but we have a long way to go as a country. And recognizing that in this new world, if we don't address that gap, we are just going to widen all the other gaps, right? Because we are just widening access to opportunity, we're widening access to socializing and to networking, we're widening access to knowledge. And so it's a really important issue that we need to address.
Yeah, really great point. Thank you, Connor. Just a last quick question from Andrew. Do you mind asking your question for us, Andrew?
Sure. So I have it right here in the chat. I'm just going to read it. So I just recently graduated from Ohio State, and I've been thinking about applying for a master's in education program. I think it's quite evident that higher education in general is in trouble. Due to COVID-19, many universities in Ohio and elsewhere across America have cut funding for certain departments and programs. So what do you think the future of education looks like? Do you think Americans will embrace trade or technical schools in the future instead of colleges per se, like university?
Yeah, great question. So a few things. I'm just taking some notes. I referenced this before, but I break out higher education like broadly into 3 tiers. You have elite institutions, you have mid-tier institutions, and then you have more local community colleges. I think that the top and the bottom, the more elite institutions, the more community colleges, I think that they're going to stay pretty much the same. The Princetons of the world will continue doing what Princeton does because they're kind of isolated in that sense. They're kind of protected from these market dynamics. Community colleges, they already focus much of their work on local collaborations with employers. I feel like that's the direction that we're moving in. The middle, I feel, is in threat. And what we'll see, I think we're going to see new cost-cutting measures. I think we're going to see more online learning. I think we're going to see much more of an emphasis, to Michael's question, on skills and a greater scrutiny of the ROI of education programs based on funding or based on job placement outcomes. And you're actually starting to see this as well with some of the performance-based funding, like in California, where actually schools are starting to have funding that is contingent upon what are the job outcomes that your students are seeing. And so I think that that's going to be just come into much sharper focus because people are going to start asking, like, what am I paying for? Why am I doing this? And that question of what am I paying for becomes even more stark when you are online, right? And I'm sure you've all felt this when you are, as students, when you're immersed in a college environment, it's just like so stimulating in so many different reasons. It's like, oh my God, there's so much value here. But when it turns into this online modality where it feels like similar to a course that that you could be getting for free, on another internet site, which is all on a screen, I think consumers are going to be much pickier, more discerning buyers.
Yeah, I completely agree. Rebecca has a question in the chat. Rebecca, if you could introduce yourself and read it out loud for us, and then Connor, if you could just provide a short response, as it is almost 2:00.
Oh, sure. My name is Rebecca. I am a MS Nutrition and PH student, and I work at CASE in Environmental Health and Safety. My question is, a point that I think is interesting to bring up is the distinct change in conversation around education. For example, my mother has been working as an accountant for over 25 years, but without a 4-year degree. Back in the 1970s, they have had what's called trade schools, which seem non-existent now. I feel like you're extremely innovative in the points that you're bringing up, but I also can feel that trade school spirit in some of the points you're bringing up as well. Moreover, how do you plan to address the learning gaps between different generations?
Yeah, I think trades are phenomenal. Like I think that we kind of, again, we poo-poo them in light of the dream of the bachelor's and the 4-year program that every American needs to do, which again is ridiculous. But there are some really incredible trade jobs, and that I think are phenomenal fits for people. And so I think, how can we rebrand trades in this country? You know, things like plumbers or electricians or HVAC technicians, really well-paying, solid jobs that people might not consider going into because it's slightly deviant from kind of traditional paths. I think there's incredible opportunity for us to encourage folks to go into those tracks. You know, the learning across different generations. This is you know, something that I touched on before. I think we have a long way to go with improving the learning experience for adults, especially adults who are not natives with technology. I think that there's so much potential there, and we have to be really careful that we're not just catering to people who grew up using TikTok. So yeah, and I think that, in addition to not over-indexing on virtual education for younger segments, and not depriving them of some of the really important social you know, activities and learnings that are so crucial to early childhood development. So it's a big topic, but those are just a few. It's a smattering of thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Connor, for your really insightful remarks. And I'm sure we've all enjoyed hearing about your thoughts on education and about Merit America, as well as the rest of your background. I'm going to turn it over to Michael now.
Thanks, Connor, and thanks very much, Yvonne, for doing this. It's so great to see students like Yvonne step up and moderate sessions, and it's a great experience. And Yvonne, you did a good job. It was awesome. So just a couple of announcements. By the way, I loved your TikTok reference. I have challenged our team to figure out how the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship can get on TikTok. That's our, of course, Yvonne and Elizabeth, who are both on, are like, we don't use TikTok. I'm like, we got to figure it out. This is our moment. Just a couple of announcements. Actually, this week is like Bay Area Cleveland natives returning back home via our session. Tomorrow, I don't know, do you know Adam Bain, who used to be the COO of Twitter?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So he's a Miami grad. He worked actually at cleveland.com. He's going to be our speaker tomorrow. So 1 o'clock, Adam will join us with Elizabeth moderating. So keeping it real with the Veale Institute interns, putting them hard to work this week. And then next week, we've got 2 sessions. We have Eric Verplug, actually another San Francisco-based alum who's a managing director at Deutsche Telekom Capital Partners, will be with us next Tuesday. And then for those of you who have an interest in dentistry, we've got a panel focused on entrepreneurship in dentistry with doctors Margaret Frankel and Jeff Rosenthal. So for those that are either old friends on this session, this speaker series, or new, keep checking. We're going to keep adding more and more programming. And Connor, we do look forward, once travel restrictions change, next time you're back in Cleveland, we'd love to get you and your family back on campus. And again, congrats on what you've done. We love Merit America. Seems great, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do with the organization.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so much fun being here. Huge fan of the CASE community, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.